Good morning, world. Welcome to another episode of Xendependently Minded. If you are a new or returning listener, I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we get into the episode, here's a brief disclaimer. Enjoy. The views and opinions expressed by past, present, and future guests of Xendependently Minded have not been expressed by me, and they may not even be shared by me. The views and opinions that I express are, of course, satirical. If you're confused, then try this thought experiment to help you understand. If you like what I said, or say, and you agree, then you can tell yourself that it is my real opinion, and it's not satirical. If you don't agree with what I say, and you're disgusted and repulsed by it, then obviously I'm just being satirical. Obviously, these aren't my real opinions, because this is clearly a character, and nobody would actually have these opinions, would they? Anyway, enjoy the episode. How's it going, boys and girls? It's your boy, Quality Leering Center 2025 Award recipient Jacob Frey, back at it with another episode of Who Done It. Last time we spoke was the end of 2025, and not really that many things have happened since December. It was around December 22nd, 2025. So this is going to be a quick one. There are a couple domestic issues, some pop culture things I'm going to talk about, and then go on our merry way, and then you guys will hear from me in a month or so. No, in all seriousness, quite a few things have happened. The chaos from 2025 has spilled over into 2026, and it's going to be another year filled with head scratchers, genuinely good moves that are watered down or misunderstood, and then just complete retardation. As is with every single, issue that involves humans and other humans that want something. But anyway, and just to give a preview of the 5 topics I'll be talking about today, first and foremost, I'm going to be talking about the daycare fraud and larger fraud in the United States. I'm going to talk about Maduro being captured and flown out of Venezuela, Trump looking to ban corporate entities from buying single-family homes, 1,500 troops that are ready to mobilize to Minneapolis, and Greenland. So, if those topics interest you, please listen. I will leave some timestamps for the specific subjects if you want to skip and move around to them. Let's get into it. All right, let's get into it. So, there's a big viral video that a guy named Nick Shirley came out with that exposed the wide-scale issue of daycare fraud in Minnesota. So Nick Shirley, this guy went insanely viral. He got like 100 million views within a few days of this video being posted. There's a lot of outrage. Of course, a lot of people immediately go to, well, this is racism because he only focuses on the Somali daycare fraud. He only is doing this. He's only doing that. More people are outraged at the fact that someone uncovered this, as opposed to the actual fraud being committed. And the daycare fraud in Minneapolis, it's bad. It's bad. It could be billions of dollars. Governor Tim Walz most likely is stepping down and not running for re-election for governor of Minnesota because of this fraud. It's not a coincidence that he chose to step down. Regardless, Minnesota's been in shambles. It's a complete joke. It's been bad for a while. The people of Minnesota have been complaining about being infiltrated by outsiders who refuse to integrate. They're opening mosques. They're blasting their prayer call in the morning, waking up and disturbing all the local residents, people who have grown up there that are multi-generation families from Minnesota. And when they voice their concerns to city council, they're met with eye rolls and they get lectured about not being welcoming. It's a complete joke. It's a complete insult and a slap to the face of the people who built Minnesota and the offspring of the people who built Minnesota, the great state of Minnesota. So the daycare fraud is bad, but it goes so much deeper than this. The Minnesota daycare fraud is like the dam that is about to come down, if not has already come down, and it exposes just deeper fraud, how entrenched this fraud is into the United States. Of course, it's not just immigrants that are committing this. They need help. There's somebody on the inside, there's somebody with experience in Minnesota local that is aware of, it could be even lawyers, could be corporate entities, could be political people, could be politicians, could be their aides, someone who feels like they're doing the right thing, sticking it to the government. Well, you might as well help these people when they're in need and blah blah blah. But there has to be people that are on the inside or that at least are aware of these already existing loopholes. So it's not a race thing. Fraud is bad anyway. So much fraud was uncovered by Elon Musk and Doge, and almost nothing was done about it. The biggest addressing of the fraud was more of a dig and a kind of, stripping a bit of power from the CIA when USAID was shut down. Because USAID had nothing to do with aid, despite the name being created to look like that, US Aid. It actually had nothing to do with that. It was like the United States Association for International Development or something like that. Anyway, the daycare fraud is bad, but it goes so much deeper than that with healthcare fraud, which a part of this daycare fraud also involved healthcare fraud because there were some fake autism centers with no people there. Social Security is some of the biggest fraud that was uncovered by Doge, and again, nothing was done about it. So, will anything be done here in an attempt to actually squash the fraud? I don't know. They're claiming it's being looked into. This administration is claiming a lot of things that haven't actually come true. Well, I don't want to make it sound that bad, but they've claimed a few things that haven't come true. The primary motivation is probably sticking it to Tim Walz and to the Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who is just the biggest phony cuck that I've ever seen in my life. Every time this guy opens his mouth, it makes me sick. He reminds me of like discount Gavin Newsom, except Gavin Newsom is much more polished in that he's a better liar, a better politician, a better snake. He always knows the right thing to say. Jacob Frey is just like a bumbling idiot. He's constantly being trotted out with leagues of megamind forehead people behind him, and he goes up there and he talks about how great how the Somalian people are like the heartbeat of Minnesota, and how it's great to the Minnesota fraud is racism, and it's completely not true, and it's white nationalism, and it's white supremacy, and all the buzzwords that died, you thought 5 years ago, but they're like being regenerated by the health pack or something. And there's a really funny video of him at it was shortly after he was elected. It was so funny. It was him versus another like megamind forehead guy who is not an American. I'm sorry, not an American. Spoke broken English, not from America. Good friends with Ilhan Omar, person who says that their number one priority is Somalia and not the United States, despite being a representative. It was between that alien and this guy. So it was like the people of Minneapolis were screwed either way. But there's a funny video of this guy, Jacob Frey. He's at a traditional Somalian restaurant, and they're feeding him food that's not even on the menu. They're like purposely feeding him a food that is has a reputation in the Somali community to be this is an acquired taste kind of food. This is something that, kids hate. It's just some type of sludge with rice. And you can see, if you look up this video, you can see him. He's doing the classic thing that kids do when they're trying to be nice and they don't like the food they're eating. He's rolling it around. He's like holding his breath. His cheeks are puffed up with air, and he's giving it like the okay sign. Oh, this is so good. And the guy next to him is like a yellow-teethed freak, and he's laughing because he knows exactly what they're doing. They're using him. They're playing him for a fool, and he's falling for it because, that's modern leftism these days. I hate to say it. Modern leftism, I'm going to talk a little bit more about them later. I guess I should talk about them now, but because this has to do with Minneapolis. But modern leftism is just, white guilt, hypocrisy, especially when it comes to things like guns. Because what we're seeing right now is, I'm going to move these notes over because I was going to talk about these separately, but I can do them together. But, pretending to be against the use of automatic rifles, assault rifles, things like this. Meanwhile, all because Minnesota refuses to enforce immigration law. They're refusing to address the mobs of people that are blocking or attempting to block ICE agents, all because they're just neglecting to do their duties as a state in the United States of America. Now there are 1,500 troops, military troops, that are ready to be mobilized to go to Minneapolis to support Trump's potential use of Insurrection Act. So this wouldn't be the first time something like this happens. The George Floyd riots, the Summer of Love, the longest consecutive riots in U.S. history. This wouldn't be the first time. Maybe this might be the first time technically this act is activated, but we've mobilized armed troops to go quell some situations because a lot of these cities, they think that they're doing the right thing by allowing these people to get violent. And we've already seen 2 potential run-ins, 2 fatal interactions with ICE, which wouldn't happen if the leaders of these countries would do their jobs. Renee Good, who I'm not going to trample on her corpse because I'm not a leftist. I'm not going to defend her like she's a hero, but she would be alive, most likely, if, first of all, she acted like an adult and she didn't try to impede ICE agents from doing their jobs, doing the jobs that they signed up for, doing the jobs that they are legally mandated to do, doing their jobs that are frankly needed in the United States with upwards of 20 million illegals in the country. Less than 1 million have been deported, but that's because apparently most people have self-deported, blah, blah, blah. That's what they're claiming. The border's been secured, and now we're doing the cleanup job. I have no problem with it. I'm so past having problems with it. I'm completely in support of nearly everything that they've done here. But all Minnesota has to do is enforce immigration law. Now there are 1,500 military troops on their way to enforce immigration law, or to at least protect ICE agents while they do their job. I mean, this is a complete disaster on the side of Minnesota. It's a disaster, and this also hurts ICE's ability to do their jobs because now it's going to take longer for them to go in. Nothing sets an alarm off for an illegal that's being harbored somewhere than 1,500 troops marching down a street. If that's not a warning for you to get out of here, then I don't know what is. And what are these fat leftists using to patrol the streets and act like they're going to fight off these military troops with? Assault rifles. There's videos everywhere of these fat idiots holding assault rifles. I mean, this is the kind of thing where you wonder, like, are we okay as a country? What's in the water in Minnesota? Where was this fat retard raised in a quality learning center? Because you're putting your life on the line. You're breaking the law. You're making an overt threat to federal law enforcement agents and military members. For what? If you went and asked them, they wouldn't tell you. They couldn't tell you. Are you that passionate about daycare fraud? Are you that passionate about illegal Somalians and Latin Americans? I would ask if you care about losing your job, but you probably don't have one. I mean, it's unbelievable, the hypocrisy. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And it's just a simple issue that can and will be addressed. I mean, this is not something that Trump is going to back down from. This was one of his main promises. This is probably his strongest suit. These actions that we're taking against the illegal immigration problem in the United States. I mean, it's undeniable that the border has been strengthened and the bleeding has stopped, and there's almost nobody coming into the country illegally, at least not nowhere near the numbers that they were under the Biden administration, but keeps getting stalled by this type of action. Citizens thinking that they're going to take up arms against the U.S. military and ICE, as well as local judges that are on the George Soros payroll these judges that want to make a name for themselves. They want to come out with a 9-figure book deal. They want to become a host of a NBC nightly news broadcast that are blocking the deployment of troops. I mean, it's ridiculous. I have never seen this much pushback against the exposure of immigration and fraud more in my life. And if that doesn't tell you that there are bigger players behind the scenes, then I don't know what to tell you. It reminds me of when, I want to say it was last year, it was in the spring, or maybe it was in the summer. But ICE agents were being sent to LA, and then all of a sudden there was a giant, it seemed like a coordinated resistance against those agents. There was some protests. There were some big groups of violent rioters, and all they were doing, they thought that they were just protecting the Mexicans of Los Angeles, but in reality, Gavin Newsom most likely mobilized these people because there was a massive cartel money laundering operation that was exposed. It was running out of Los Angeles, a prominent area of Los Angeles. There were government officials that were involved in it, and it was just a massive money laundering operation involving the Mexican cartels. That's why ICE was headed over there. All of a sudden, people were like, no, not the Mexicans. And then they pull that classic racist leftist line where they go, who's going to clean the toilets if you get rid of our affordable slavery? I mean, all Tim Walz has to do is enforce immigration law, tell his cuck boy, Jacob Frey, to stand down, who will probably be the next governor of Minnesota. I wouldn't be surprised. And he'll, Tim Walz will pass the torch of Somali daycare fraud on to him, and, the fraud can continue to flourish under these two traitors' administrations. Tim Walz doesn't care about what happens to Minnesota because he doesn't care about Minnesota. He's always been a strange guy. He's always been an absolutely ordinary person. I didn't have a problem with him because I didn't know anything about him when Kamala Harris picked him, and that's probably why they picked him, because everybody hated Kamala Harris. So she picked like a safe pick. He ended up being a strange guy, rubbed everybody the wrong way. And as time went on, I found out, he's actually a malevolent force for Minnesota. And his governor's administration has been to the detriment of the people of Minnesota and the United States. So, Nicolas Maduro, former leader, or fake leader, socialist leader of Venezuela, has been captured in a very astonishing, very impressive military action that saw no serious injuries or deaths on the United States side. Delta Force swooped in, took Maduro in the middle of the night. They completely didn't expect it. Apparently, all their systems went out pretty quickly. We probably took them out with like some type of power grid destruction. I really don't know. Some technology that we probably don't know about and we shouldn't know about. But the United States went in, took Maduro out, took him back to the United States, and we're gonna see what happens now. A lot of people in Venezuela are happy. Some people are not. Some of the richer folks that were friends with Maduro, part of the socialist oligarchy, they're upset. But the people of Venezuela are happy. A lot of people who fled Venezuela for the United States are happy about it. It's being said that the next guy up, who is still part of Maduro's circle, because the Maduro administration is still there, they're still in power, but the next guy up for now seems willing to work with America. So the United States has taken over their oil. We're starting to supposedly get the oil that was owed to us. But don't get it twisted. This was not about the oil mainly. Well, it was, but not in the way that the United States needs the oil and we're going in there and we're taking it. Boom. This is a larger play to kick Russia and China out of our hemisphere because they have their grubby hands all over it. That's what the Panama Canal action was to get China's hands off of the Panama Canal because they were controlling it, which is not good. This is our hemisphere, not theirs. It'd be the same as us trying to control some shipping lanes in Asia that affect China. And it's the same reason why we took out Maduro, because Maduro was cozying up to Russia and China, and China buys the overwhelming majority of Venezuela's oil. Russia and China send a bunch of weapons, and supposedly Venezuela's air defense system was so superior to the rest of the world because Russia and China had armed them and set up their air defense systems, and we saw how well that worked out. This gives me confidence. I never really had any wavering confidence in the United States military's ability to do things like this. I mean, we saw what they did in Iran last year, strikes on those nuclear facilities, and this was just a very quick, clean operation. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens now, because on one hand, when we did stuff like this and we destabilized countries and we toppled regimes in the Middle East, we didn't really feel the blowback. Not in the way that we may feel a blowback with Venezuela, with an immigration crisis, a refugee crisis. We are closer to Venezuela than we are to Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, places that we've destabilized. Europe has felt the brunt of that. They've millions, tens of millions, if not more, refugees have come since the 80s and 90s, and all the ensuing regime changes and destabilizing operations that have taken place. But this could spell some more immigration issues. But at the same time, the United States has, like I've talked about earlier, they've strengthened the border. They've completely beefed up the border. It is really hard to come in, apparently. We're not seeing 20 million people coming in illegally, so I guess it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Venezuela now. Are they going to hold elections? Will the elections be legit? Are they going to need assistance in holding these elections? How respected will the government be? What's going to be done to the rest of the remaining folks of the regime? Because only Maduro was taken out. A couple of his security detail were killed, and other than that, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I wasn't entirely in favor of this before it happened, but also I wasn't in favor of striking Iran. And, since then, it's supposedly worked out, but all that's happened in Iran is we have like part 2 of the Arab Spring, and I'm not accusing the Iranians of being, beefed up and brainwashed by the CIA. They have their own reasons to hate the regime right now. I don't like them. I don't know much about them, but I've seen a lot of Iranians and people who used to live in Iran talk about how violent the regime is, how crooked and corrupt the regime is. The world would benefit, including Iranians first and foremost. They would benefit from this regime being toppled. But again, it's like Venezuela. Who is going to take it over? We don't need to occupy Iran. We don't know much about Iran. We don't know how to run Iran better than Iranians do. So all that's happened in Iran is they're now building up their ballistic missiles. Trump said we will bomb those as well, and that they need to stop with that program. First it was the nuclear program, now it's the ballistic missile systems. They were having a pretty large protests against the regime, and it seems like those have died down. A lot of the protesters were met with violence. They were killed, they were injured, maimed, whatever. And it seemed like for a second that the regime could topple, but it seems that they've gotten control of that situation, and any second now we could see some bombing of Iran. We could see some bombing of their ballistic missile factories or facilities. So, I mean, like I've said before, the United States is the most powerful nation in the entire world. It can deal with domestic issues, and it can deal with foreign issues, but not at the rate that we've been doing it. So there are things that need to happen in the United States before we start bombing Iran's ballistic missile facilities and before we start toppling dictators. I'm not saying we can't do both, but we've kind of shown that we can't do both, or at least one is going to be neglected, and then what ends up happening is neither of them are as successful as they should have been had we done them correctly, had we dealt with the $38 trillion debt, had we dealt with the affordability crisis, had we dealt with this and that back home. Which leads me to my next point. Trump is looking to make a big move, which I think would result in a big win for the affordability issue in the United States. He's looking to ban corporate entities from buying single-family homes. Now, what would this do to the 65 to 70% of single-family homes that are already owned by corporate entities? I don't know. I don't know if there is a way you can legally force them to get rid of the homes or limit the amount of homes that they own. But if you don't do an outright ban, there's always going to be a way around it. What BlackRock and Blackstone end up doing is they buy up these houses, but they don't buy them up as BlackRock and Blackstone. They create a bunch of smaller companies, smaller foundations that end up buying these homes, and it drives up the price, hurts the affordability of homes in the United States. And I've said it many times before, but one of the staples of the middle class, one of the ways that you knew, one of the milestones that you would surpass, kind of signaling that you were a member of the middle class and therefore the largest class in the United States, the heartbeat of the United States, was buying a home. And it's become increasingly difficult for people to buy homes in the United States. And part of it is because companies like BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard, State Street, they're all able to buy single family homes, rent them out forever, or demolish them and rent them out and build a disgusting dystopian brutalist architecture style apartment complex and rent it out to people. It's really hard to find a home in a place that has jobs that isn't above $400,000, which is when you look at the median household income for the United States, that makes buying homes very difficult. So this could be a big win. I'm not a real estate guy, so I couldn't tell you what kind of, because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, especially when it comes to money and real estate. So it's going to be interesting to see how this affects the affordability, if it even affects it at all. Trump is also looking at preventing credit card companies from having interest rates higher than 10% or something like that. He's also looking at lowering the rate, replacing the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, with somebody else. So these are all things that I don't understand great, but I would love to have somebody on that can explain them to me. But I had a guy who's he's very business savvy, explain to me that a lot of these moves are good for the short term, bad for the long term. It'll make borrowing money easier, and then if you bring down the affordability, the cost of buying homes, we could create another housing bubble, which people have said we're already kind of in. So these things don't sound good, but I'm not going to speak on them too deeply because I don't really understand them. But this could be a big win for affordability, and we'll have to see how that plays out. The last thing I wanted to talk about. So, Greenland. The United States has been looking to, Trump's administration specifically, has been looking to take over Greenland. It attempted to have some talks last year. J.D. Vance went to Greenland and met with the president of Greenland or whatever and talked to some high up people there. Didn't result in anything. And now Trump has gone on this pretty reckless tirade, openly talking about the potential use of military action to take Greenland, which is something that I am so vehemently opposed to. I don't want any military action on Greenland. It could be one of those things where Trump does this all the time, where he throws out an idea or a reporter asks him a question, he kind of gives a reckless answer and then plays it off or just ignores it. He just kind of wants to test the waters and see what the reaction to it will be. But this is not something that you can play around with. Greenland is under the administrative jurisdiction of Denmark. Denmark is a NATO country. NATO, we've been butting heads with NATO for a while. A lot of it has been, deserved on NATO's part, the rest of NATO, because they, like I've said, they haven't been fulfilling their agreements, which are like the foundation of NATO. And Trump's been dealing with that appropriately, and I've supported most of it. But flirting with military action with an administrative part of NATO is reckless. Threatening the people of Greenland with violence, with military action, inadvertently, passively, not directly threatening them with violence, but threatening their home, threatening violence upon their homes because we want to take Greenland. There are two main reasons that we want to take Greenland, and I think one is more important than the other, but they're pretty intertwined. First of all, they have a lot of rich minerals, whatever. They have a lot of very important minerals there. A lot of it has to do with chips that are needed for vehicles military missile systems, laser systems. So that's one piece. The other piece is its strategic location. We already have a Space Force base there. I forget the name of it. It used to be called Thule Air Base or something, and now it's a Space Force base. But this will allow us to expand, at will, rather than, asking for permission from Greenland and the Greenland authorities. We'll be able to expand these systems and better beef up our anti-missile, anti-ballistic systems in the case of a war with Russia. So that makes sense as to why we would want to expand there. Why don't we just go about it that way? Or why don't we, instead of talking about military action, why don't we send diplomats over there? Maybe they've already said no, and we'll just have to find another way. But regardless, if you're going to take a big swing and a miss by saying, well, you know what? We're just going to threaten military action. That probably hurts your chances of being able to expand the bases the way that you'd want, because now they're going to do it. They're going to go about these talks cautiously and suspiciously because we already threatened military action, and now we're going to say yes to you expanding your bases. So what? You could just attempt a coup and overthrow us? It's reckless rhetoric. I don't like the way that we've gone about this. We need to go about it in a diplomatic way. If America wants to buy Greenland, if the population agree, if they need to get like a payment of $100,000 per person, that's really nothing for us. There's only 50,000 people who live there or so. But there must not be a single shred of military force used there. We need to continue to send diplomats there. Maybe don't send Marco Rubio. Maybe don't send JD Vance. Maybe send somebody who's likable. Maybe send the Danish the Danish liaison to the United States or whatever you call those people. I forget them. Whatever Mike Huckabee is for Israel, but do it for the Danish guy. Send him over there and let's sweeten the deal. Sweeten the deal, make it a one-time thing, and then the people of Greenland will be safer, I think. I think the people of Greenland will be safer with us running Greenland building and enhancing military bases as opposed to Denmark. What's Denmark? What does Denmark do? Denmark is like the armpit of Scandinavia, and nobody cares about Denmark. Their military is a complete joke. The rest of NATO's military is really actually a complete joke. The only one that's even worth mentioning is the United Kingdom, and it's because they have nuclear weapons. And their military they spend a lot of money on it. The rest of NATO, sending like 2 troops per country to scare off the United States and Greenland. It's like, did you guys not just see what happened in Venezuela? And I'm joking, obviously. Like I said, I want no military action there. If we need to buy there, if we need to start with expanding bases, we need to open another one, that's fine. But we cannot use military force to take Greenland. I am completely opposed to that, and most people are. But that's going to do it for this episode of Xendependently Minded. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube. Give the podcast a 5-star or 4-star or whatever rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm not going to pretend to even know how that works, but let me know. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode. Give me some topics that you want to talk about that aren't, just random current events. It could be other topics that you want me to cover or you want me to give my opinion on or start researching to form an opinion on. If you want to debate, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to tell me a story about a time that you, bombed a job interview, let me know. DM me on any of the podcast platforms you listen to. There's most likely a way that you can send a message. You can even send a comment, leave me your email address, hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we'll have a conversation. I would love to have more guests on the episode. You don't have to be a highly credentialed person. You don't have to be credentialed at all. I just want to learn something from you. I believe that most people, I don't want to say everybody at this point, but most people have something to say that's worth listening to. So, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Hope you're enjoying the new year. I eventually will do a State of the Union address, but I got to catch my breath with all the things that have been going on. So, State of the Union maybe will be coming soon. I would love to make a promise, but I don't want to make a promise that I'm going to have to break. So, hope you enjoyed the episode. Get yourself some merch, stay warm, stay hydrated, and I'll see you on the next episode. As always, stay safe and stay away from those crazies out there. Thank you.